From AMD to Nvidia, we've had a lot of very high performing components released. Today, we're going to be doing a review of the Be Quiet Silent Base 802 case, and we're going to see if it's up to the task at handling these very high-end components. Let's get started. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. Today we're going to talk about the Be Quiet Silent Base 802. Now they did send me this case in order to evaluate and review, but this video is not sponsored, so all of these will be my honest opinions. We're going to be taking a look at this case through the viewpoint of all the very high performing hardware that's being released. Of course, this is going to include AMD, the new GPUs, as well as the new CPUs, and of course the RTX 3000 series Nvidia GPUs. I did a couple of different builds in this case in order to test out its performance as well as how flexible it can be with different configurations. Now, in the past, I have done various builds in the various Be Quiet cases. For example, actually the first one that I bought myself was the Be Quiet 900, the Dark Base 900. This is a really massive case. I did a really nice and intricate water cooling loop. One of the main things that Be Quiet tries to do is give you a very high performing, but at the same time, silent case. And they do this in two ways. First, with their actual case design, and then secondly, they also have their own fans that are included with these cases. They're typically also very high performing with a low noise profile. So we're going to evaluate this case in 4 different categories, and this is what I call the classical score. Number 1 is going to be the performance of the case. This is going to have to do with airflow and how it handles these high-end components. Number 2 will be the price and value. We're going to see how this case is priced in the market compared to other cases and how it stacks up. Number 3 is going to be sort of the innovation of the case, what makes this different from everything else. And then number 4 will be the aesthetics, how the case looks. So first, let's tackle performance. So I did a couple of variations in builds in this actual case. The first one that I did was using an X570 Tai-Chi with a 5950X. Kind of wanted to see what the CPU performance was going to be. I also used the Be Quiet Pure Loop 360mm AIO. That's something I reviewed on my channel previously as well as using the White Shadow Rock 3. This is going to be an air cooler. I wanted to see if there was going to be any significant difference in sort of the cooling performance between both of them, as well as aesthetically see how each would fit in this case. So first, let's talk about the case itself as it pertains to performance. Now, in the past with other Be Quiet cases, such as the 700 or the 900 that I've mentioned before, they're going to be a lot more closed off and insulated in order to give you a much quieter experience. The combination there is that they have high performing fans that can be run at higher RPMs, but have a much more pleasant and lower noise profile. Now with this, the Silent Base 802, they are taking a little bit different approach, and that's going to be with airflow. And now the first thing will be the front of the case. It is going to come, of course, with 140mm Be Quiet fans, but it will also come with a swappable front panel. You can take the original one off, and then you can put what is basically like a mesh system right in the front, giving you significantly more airflow. Now the same will be true for the top. Instead of having something solid that will block airflow, you have a lot more access to air, and you can simply put a little dust filter on top. That way, as hot air rises, or even if you're using an AIO mounted on the top, all of that hot air will be able to switch out without any issues. Now, I compare this case directly side by side to their 700 case, and of course, the main difference here is the 700 has a much more restrictive front panel as well as a more restrictive top panel. The Silent Base 802, on the other hand, comes with these panels in the box that you can replace that have much better airflow, and in general, even if running some of the new Ryzen 5000 CPUs and overclocking them and doing benchmarks, not to mention pairing them with something like an RTX 3090 that I had in this case, temperatures actually stayed really nice with this nice open design. The airflow inside the case definitely was a lot better than on the 700 version, where the hot air doesn't have as many places to move, so it tends to stay stuck a little bit more inside. Now this one, the 802 with the less restrictive front panel, fresh air comes right in and all that hot air rises and it can quickly escape the case, therefore kind of keeping your components a little bit cooler in general. I did see some cooler CPU temperatures. My GPU temperatures stayed great as well. Not to mention one big performance benefit aside from lower temperatures of having great airflow like this, in a lot of cases it's actually going to be quieter because you have such unrestricted airflow through the front and through the top of the case as well as out the back. That means that you don't have to run the fans at higher RPM, and that hot air is going to more quickly escape your case. And all of your other components, like if you have an air-cooled GPU or something like that, certainly those fans are also automatically going to run cooler just because there's more cool air coming in the case and the hot air is escaping a lot faster. So to sum up the first category of performance, I think it's clear that Be Quiet's intention here was to open up the airflow in order to really not only get better thermals, but also be able to run all of the fans at lower speeds. Therefore, I really do think it fulfills these two objectives very well. In terms of the performance, if I were to compare it to two other cases that I've done builds in that are very high airflow cases, for example, there's going to be the Fractal Design Meshify. It takes pretty much the same approach, having a mesh panel on the front as well as on the top. That way you have a lot better airflow. I would say compared to the Fractal Design Meshify, performance is certainly very similar, and I do think because of the included fans that you get with this case, you do have a little bit more of an advantage versus the Meshify. And the other very high airflow case that I've used in the past, that's going to be the Cooler Master H500M. Now this has a massive mesh front panel in the front, and it also has 200mm included fans. So in terms at least of that front airflow, that is definitely a lot of airflow that you get in the case. But on the top of the case, there is a more restrictive glass panel, while on this Be Quiet case, you do have a nice mesh on top. You can just put a little dust filter. So I would say while the Cooler Master does have better airflow on the front, just because of those massive 200mm fans, if you put the top together, that's a little more restrictive. I think they overall sort of equal out, because this is going to have a little bit better airflow going through the top, and of course the front airflow is very good as well with 140mm Be Quiet fans. Now for this first performance category, let's give this case a classical score. Now this is going to be scored out of 5, and I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. I think Be Quiet really hit the nail on the head here. High airflow cases, especially with the very demanding GPUs that we have nowadays, certainly is where the great performance is going to be at, and you combine that with the great high performing fans that you get with the case, it certainly makes it a very high performer out of the box as soon as you put that mesh panel on there. So now let's talk about the price and value that this case offers compared to other cases on the market. Now this is going to come in with the tempered glass at MSRP under $200. I believe it should be somewhere around $170. Now this is going to be competitive with the Fractal Design Meshify that we mentioned before, and it's considerably cheaper than something like the Cooler Master H500M, which usually retails for well over $200. Now we've already covered that the cooling performance on this case and the airflow is certainly very good. Let's discuss some of the other items. Now here is the glass panel from the case. It actually comes out in a very intuitive little button that you push and it snaps right off. And the first thing that I thought when I held this panel, it feels almost like a Mercedes car door. If you've ever opened one of those, very, very heavy. It's actually really thick glass. It may be the thickest glass that I've actually ever seen on a computer case. And it's super easy to put on and off. You just snap it in place. So I think being a sub $200 case, it definitely feels a lot more high-end than that. And I have no problem throwing in super high-end components like even a 3090 in this case. Everything feels top-notch and quality. And not to mention, for that price, you're also going to get those 340mm Be Quiet fans, which are very high performing and certainly work themselves really nicely into the value proposition of this case. So now let's give it a classical score for the price and the value that it represents. I'm going to give it a 4.5 once again. Now, I think that for under $200, it's a very high quality case. And in fact, even compared to the Dark Base 900, that's well over $200, I thought that the build quality was really exceptional in a case like this. And when you put together that you get those included fans, not to mention much better performance than in the past with the high airflow front. It even comes with this nice little stand that you can put on the bottom to elevate the case a little bit. So with this case, for the price, there are so many little features that you get in build quality and performance that I absolutely think it's well worth the money. Let's talk about the third category, and that's going to be the innovation. Of course, Be Quiet isn't the first manufacturer to do mesh panels or do high airflow, but this case certainly has other nice little features that just make the build experience a lot better. For example, we mentioned the side panels with a little button, you can snap them on and off. This actually makes the everyday experience a lot better. I know that I'm always going into the case to change something or to clean something out. Another thing that makes doing a build in this case really easy, on the top you do have a nice little radiator bracket that you can actually pull out, attach your radiator to. Let's say you're doing like a 360mm AIO like I did with the Pure Loop here. Then you just put it straight back. It's so much easier to attach everything without having to hold it in place when you're hovering over the case. Now, something else I really like, usually these Be Quiet cases, as well as this one, do come with a nice little fan controller in the back that on the top of the case, it actually has a button with auto 1, 2, 3 that you can actually control the fan curve. Something else that's really cool, you can actually do an inverted motherboard build, basically switch the entire case around. Let's say if you have it on your desk on the opposite end or something like that. In fact, I did this very thing when I did my 900 build. I inverted the motherboard so everything's upside down. It's really unique, really cool. With this one, I left it sort of standard because I wanted to see how the case would perform in a standard format. So for the classical score in this category of the innovation, I think I really have to give it another 4.5. It's just way too many cool features in a case like this. And then lastly, let's talk about the aesthetics of this case. And then this one's going to be pretty much all white with a couple of black accents like on the front when you have the mesh panel. Overall, aesthetically, I've always loved how unique these Be Quiet cases look. Just like we mentioned before with the innovation, how many features that they pack in, the design elements that they have in cases like this, also very interesting. The nice angles that they take into the design, especially this one, you have that little bottom stand that you can put. It certainly makes it a lot different than the cases that are more like a square design. Now for the classical score, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I think the case looks really good. Even in white, it looks really, really nice. But in this instance, I really like the white design with the stand on the bottom, as well as the little accents that it has on the front. And now, in order to be balanced, if I have to give any critique or any cons to the case, a couple of things that I can think of. For example, the white color isn't necessarily my favorite. I probably would prefer to go with the black color. It seems like sometimes the different panels can have a little bit of variation with white to white. White can be a little bit more difficult to match, especially when you're using different materials. Another thing is inside the case on the right where you have these little things that you can snap off and you can put a hard drive cage. It would be nicer if there was an easier way for you to sort of vertically mount different SSD 2.5-inch SSD drives. So to sum it up, this case is going to get a classical score altogether of 17.5 out of 20, which is certainly a very high score. And this is going to get my Editor's Choice Award. I don't give this award out very often. I only give it out to things that really meet a lot of criteria. I've built in so many cases before than various builds in both cases that are more restrictive and have better airflow. So I feel that this case pretty much takes all of the elements that I like when building a PC. First, I like it to be unique and have these cool things like be modular, inverted motherboards. I like it to be able to have really nice airflow and performance, as well as not really be priced extremely expensive. So I think this case really puts all of those elements together. All right, guys, let me know if you have any questions down below. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you guys on the next video.